Now, the Ministry of Science and Technology notified the National Geospatial Policy 2022, which is expected to give a big booster shot to startups and deep tech. What exactly is the impact? What is it that has been notified? Why is it a game changer? Here is Genesys International Corp in conversation with my colleague, Avanne Dubash.
Moving on, then, the Ministry of Science and Technology has notified the National Geospatial Policy of 2022. Now, this is a policy which seeks to develop the National Geospatial Data Framework and enable the easy availability of data to businesses and the general public. In order to discuss this and lots more, we've got Sajid Malik. He's the Chairman Managing Director at Genesys International Corporation. Thank you so much for taking time out and joining in. Just walk us through what you've made of the guidelines which is really put in place in order to promote the geospatial data industry and how we can really improve data for citizen services down the line.
Yeah, well, thank you, ET, now for bringing attention to this policy, which we believe is path-breaking because it really marks the beginning of the geospatial industry in India in one sense, because the policy was much needed, much awaited for clarity on what can be done and what really this policy, which is fairly comprehensive, does is also has a very clear framework and a vision as to what kind of data sets, by what time, and which are the players who can, stakeholders who need to play a role in it. So this is a fantastic policy as far as the geospatial industry goes, and a very key pillar of digital India and of building the 5 trillion economy is being unleashed right now, because we need to remember that India has the origins of one of the biggest mapping endeavors ever done in the history of mankind, which was a great trigonometric survey more than 150, 170 years back, which was the origins of the Survey of India, which has a rich history. And unfortunately, none of the latest technologies of the last few decades and what's especially happening in the last 10, 15 years was in a position to be harnessed for the Indian economy, for infrastructure development, and for the country at large. What this policy does is allows for all of that to happen. And it is a fairly forward-looking policy, which I think is going to see the birth of many content players and solution providers, which would help the average citizen and the country at large. So case in point, what we are doing as a company, which is creating the national digital twin or digital twin of entire urban India, is something that even the policy speaks about.
So, Mr. Malik, I understand that securing this type of data poses major challenges and a lot of bottlenecks that are still yet to be fully addressed. Do you think that the likes of access control and privacy pose a lot of issues, such as the unit of protection? Could you highlight some of these challenges?
So I think that clearly the adoption of this technology far outweighs any potential perceived security risks or privacy issues. There are enough controls being put in by the policy as well as by the industry stakeholders where security-related issues and privacy-related issues are addressed. I think it has to be noted that worldwide, these technologies are being used in a very widespread manner, and they have only impacted their respective countries in a positive way.
Okay. Going forward, what's your outlook on the plans for the government to establish the integrated data and information framework under which the geospatial knowledge infrastructure is going to be developed by 2030?
I think the policy has a very good 15-year vision of the kind of data that needs to be created. And they have had, as I mentioned earlier, a fairly comprehensive view. They have looked at the blue economy, which means they have looked at even our oceans, our inland water networks, bathymetric surface, subsurface utility mapping, and importantly, creating a digital twin or the need for having a digital twin for the country. So in one sense, they have covered almost every aspect of the kind of data that needs to be done. And they have provided timelines, and they have invited, in fact, the private sector to play an important role in the same.
Yes, indeed. And, given the fact that India's geospatial market is estimated to be worth about 27,000 odd crores by 2025 and could grow to about 63,000 crores by 2030, how are you looking at the overall potential, what it means for private players as well?
So, the numbers that you just mentioned speaks about, the growth possibilities which are there in this sector. You need to remember that India is a very large country. So the state of Maharashtra is bigger than Britain. So you can see that from a mapping perspective, there's a lot that needs to be done, number one. Number two, I think newer applications are something that I believe we as a country may probably show the way in geospatial the same way that we showed in with the UPI or with Aadhaar. I think there's a lot of innovation possibilities which are there in the geospatial space. And as Genesys, we hope to play an important role in it.
Given the fact, Mr. Malik, that there are plans for digital twins of major cities and towns, and the real plan is to enable companies to use their own geospatial data, how is that expected to work? If you could just explain.
So clearly look at any entity who is working in the infrastructure development space, or look at any entity which has got a large digital requirement, which is practically now almost everybody. Spatial component plays a very important role in it. So there is a study done that almost 80% of all information has got a spatial context to it. So for example, the digital twins that we are making of a city can be used by all the urban bodies for better urban planning, for all the utility companies, be it telecom, power, city gas, or any for disaster management. We have been seeing the urban floodings, problem that we have been having in India of late. What happened to Bangalore, a few weeks back. Geospatial plays a very large role in all these spheres.
So what more is it that you're expecting from the government on this front, given that the plan is really to use this national framework for improving citizen services and much more? What more do you think needs to and can be done?
I think one very important piece of what needs to be done, which is to come with a very clear policy, and a wish list of the government has come out. I think that's one side of the coin. The second side is, of course, adoption. Face it or not, a lot of these requirements is by the government itself. So adoption of these technologies will play a very large role. So I believe that, and I think our Prime Minister has already taken a lead in that. If you were to look at the Gati Shakti program, that is really a geospatial program, a GIS program, which links all the various infrastructure initiatives together on a common platform. So I think adoption is going to be key, especially given this administration, and that will go a long way as far as the industry goes.
All right, Mr. Malik, we'll let you go on that note. Appreciate you taking the time out and joining us on Startup Central.
Thank you.